Yeah, gotta aim for the top like, hold up. Yeah, I can never doubt myself, I know better. All of you critics be acting like you know better. Blowing the smoke, but I know when the dust settles that I'm in my element. It's evident that there's levels to the game.
So what's happening, people? Welcome back to the Athletes podcast. Happy to be back with my man Reid Meyer, CEO and co-founder of A2A. I am Ryan Holmes, and this is another fun episode of the A2A podcast. This time we're going to get back to the sports, the essence of, at least the essence of sports a little bit, which is competition. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, but obviously we do our quick hitters before we jump in to our main topic. And today for my quick hitter, I want to go with a head scratcher, I guess, and that is, why is Phillip Rivers coming back to the NFL? And it posed Peter Schrager, who's now on ESPN, was formerly of Good Morning Football, posed a good question on Twitter where he said, if Phillip Rivers takes one snap for the Colts, does that restart his clock for the Hall of Fame? And I feel like that's a great question. And obviously we've never really seen this before, but it's very interesting how the Colts are obviously scraping the bottom of the barrel right now, where they had to call in Phillip Rivers to come back in. You know, you've got Daniel Jones who gets hurt. You got a number of other quarterbacks that apparently are hurt. You're starting Riley Leonard right now, and you're calling Phillip Rivers. So I am confused at why they would be calling Phillip Rivers. I guess I understand why. They don't have a quarterback, whatever else, but why would they go to a guy who is retired, has grandchildren now? I mean, there was a stat out that Riley Leonard is like a year or two older than Phillip Rivers' oldest kid. So like, it's just one of those things where it just doesn't make any sense. So I wish him the best if he does have to step on the field. He is apparently signing with the Colts, or has signed with the Colts practice squad. But for me, I just don't get it. Honestly, I'm not on board with it. I feel like he should have stayed retired, continued to enjoy all 17 of his kids. I think he's got like a crazy amount of kids, and just enjoyed life after football. But to come back to the Colts, I mean, I could see if he was coming back to like a contender. I know the Colts are like right now in the thick of it, and they were a contender, but without a quarterback, they are not going to be. I don't see them being a serious contender. So when I say come back to a contender, I mean come back to a team where he could be a backup, break glass if needed, which obviously the Colts are breaking glass if needed, but this is a hell of a way of going about it. So that's my quick hitter. I don't think he should do it. I am very kind of baffled by the fact that the Colts even reached out to him, but is what it is, man. Go get that bag, I guess.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. The football fan in me is incredibly confused, but the like sort of reality TV aspect of sports is so
Yeah.
intrigued just to see what happens. So you're absolutely right. I want nothing more than for Hard Knocks to come and do a mini series on just this moment in time
I
for
was
the
gonna
Colts
say the same
season.
thing. I wish that Hard Knocks was with the Colts. I can't remember who they're with in season. It might be the Bucks. But I wish that Hard Knocks was with the Colts, because this would be epic television.
Just take that crew that was on UNC for the first couple weeks before they got kicked out. Just move them over to the Colts for a couple days. You can still get something out of that work.
Yep. Something good, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna see, I guess. I don't know. My quick hitter is on the college side of things, and it's my once annual reminder to everybody that volleyball is awesome and that
Yeah.
everyone needs to watch it. Like they just started the regionals. I'm in the middle of watching it right now. Texas is smoking people, obviously. Uh, but man, I went to a school that had a really good team, so I'm obviously like I'm biased, and I was exposed to a really cool environment for that kind of stuff. But man, you talk about a game that's just constantly moving. Somebody's always doing something. It's to me, it's the same as like how I like hockey, where like there's graceful chaos, and everyone on that court knows what they're supposed to be doing, and they're doing it well. And then there's a giant explosion at the end of the play, but like I don't know what's happening. So it's just a lot of movement that is entertaining, and then somebody hits something really hard. And I feel
Mhm.
like it continues to be a highly underrated sport in my opinion. And if the professional leagues could figure out a way to not have like four different leagues and just put all the talent in one place, I just feel like it would blow up. But there's my annual, should be watching this. And when it's on ESPN, turn on fifth set and just like watch a lot of people hit a ball really hard into the ground because it's super fun to watch. But that's all I got for that. What we're going to talk about now is people hitting people very hard or choosing not to hit people very hard, I guess is a better way to put it in
Yeah,
the opt-out conversation. I'll let you kind of set the stage for us here, but we're starting to get our slew of full opt-out teams now instead of just opt-out players, which is a new thing we're doing.
completely new. And the college football playoff continues to be the best and worst anomaly I think that we have in sports. Because for so long, everybody wanted to get rid of the BCS, saying we got to take it out of the hands of computers and we got to do this and we got to do that. And then they put it in the hands of biased people, right? And I understand they, as a committee, they have to take out bias, have to do right by the teams, but let's call it what it is. They are fallible people, and instead of a machine that normally is kind of infallible and does the thing without feeling, without bias. And I think that's the thing that I'm complaining about the most right now is the committee, but that's the feature, not the bug, where they wanted to have say in a lot of these things. They wanted to kind of politicize it, honestly. Because when you realize when you add in the bias, when you add in people that are on committees that are attached to these teams, you're going to have that, right? So for me, I'm forever scorned as a Florida State fan with the college football playoff committee after Florida State was taken out from the making the playoffs, but they are also one of the original four teams from the first ever playoff, right? So Miami fans on Twitter saying that Miami is going to make the playoffs before Florida State, that's impossible because they were in the playoffs before literally anyone, to be completely honest. So that's very hard to do. But um, the college football playoff, as I said, it kind of is the best of times, it's the worst of times because you get everybody and their mother with opinions on who should be in, who should be out, this resume, that resume. And as much as they tried to make it better by adding teams to it and give it the March Madness look and feel, at least March Madness look, not maybe not so much the feel of March Madness, but maybe the look of March Madness. It's really hard to do with football. You because there isn't really a Cinderella team. It is the reverse of David versus Goliath in this situation, where David is always most of the time going to get smashed. JMU is not going to fare very well against Oregon, but it's the teams that are now opting out of bowl games that are making headlines, where the college football playoff and the teams that made it are basically a footnote right now, right? And we've got a number of teams where Notre Dame led the charge with this. And understandably so, everybody is going to use Notre Dame as the headline. But in the mix of the teams that were bowl eligible, and by bowl eligible in this situation, I don't mean the 5-7 teams such as my Florida State Seminoles who then became bowl eligible. I mean the teams that were over 500 and were bowl eligible legitimately.
Hmm.
And that was Notre Dame, Kansas State, Iowa State, Baylor, Rutgers. Rutgers was one of those 5-7 teams. Florida State as well, one of those 5-7 teams, along with Auburn, Temple, Central Florida, and Kansas. But it was the Notre Dame of all of this that really kind of tipped the scales, right? Of saying, well, we're not going to play since we didn't make the college football playoff. And people are now saying that Notre Dame is taking their ball and going home. And it's funny to me because when Florida State decided to play against Georgia, everybody wants to go with the 63-3. They want to go into this, that, and whatever. But they chose to play. Even their, was their backups, but they chose to play. and now Notre Dame is opting to not play. And Notre Dame of it all is very interesting because they're choosing not to be in a conference. There are other sports they are. Basketball in the ACC, a number of other sports that are in the ACC. But for football, they're going without a conference, and that's because they don't want to share their TV revenue. They want their own deals. And for me, when I hear that they're opting out of a bowl game, it's telling me that they're trying to take back the power with these TV deals because they understand what their the revenue is and what they gain from playing on a CBS and playing in a BCS in a BCS bowl game, right? So like that's the that's the thing for me that I feel is interesting because everybody is seeing it as they don't want to play because they're not in the college football playoff, certainly. But then the other part of it is the business side of it, where they also don't want to play because they don't want revenue going towards these TV deals. And you can't tell me
Hmm.
otherwise, because if they didn't care about that, then they'd be a part of a conference where they weren't trying to take the lion's share of the money. They're not in a conference, which means that they get all the money and don't have to share it when it comes to these TV deals. So now that they don't want to play, everybody is up in arms. But in my mind, it's kind of smart because, as I said, they're not in a conference. They would have had to go into some sort of deal, rev share wise, for a TV deal, or one that already exists with these bowl games. And they were like, no, we're not going to help out the NCAA. One, we're not going to help out the TV stations that are tied to these deals with the ESPNs and everybody else. We're just going to go at it on our own, which they've been doing without a conference. Now, I will say this, and this is the last thing I'll say about Notre Dame before I hand it off to you. You can't complain that, and I will preface this by saying I am friends with the head coach of the team's brother, first name basis, know him very well. He used to hang out when he lived here. So I am not far removed from Notre Dame in and of itself. But I will say this, you can't cry foul about the ACC lobbying for Miami to get in because you're part of the ACC in other sports, but you're not part of the ACC in football, right? So you can't cry foul about that when you don't want to be a part of that conference. It's like saying we don't want to be a part of the conversation, but we still want to know everything that's going on. It's like, no, if you don't want to be a part of the conversation, then you don't get the benefit of the doubt. You don't get to know about all these things. We're not going to lobby for you. We're not going to fight for you. You are essentially on the other side of this. Now, if you're in the ACC, we lobby for you more than anything, but they lobbied for Duke. They lobbied for Miami. The ACC did way more than they've normally done in the past to get a team into the college football playoff when it came to, like I said, Duke winning the ACC, which triggered all these criterias, as well as Miami getting in, who beat Notre Dame. So Notre Dame being upset that the ACC didn't lobby for them is kind of wild to me. But I do side with them in saying that them not playing is better for them in the long run because it gives them the power when it comes to a TV deal and seeing what they bring to the table, which is that autonomy of not being part of a conference.
Yeah, I guess what's the right way to try and I think that it was more strategic than emotional, but whether
Yeah.
it's strategic pettiness or emotional pettiness, it's a layer of pettiness, is
It's
in
yeah,
my
they're still
personal
petty.
opinion, whenever I think about it. And to me, it's this, I mean, to your point, like I think the being independent worked really well when it all came down to who are the two undefeated teams. You guys go because it's the BCS, and we pick number one and number two, and it's easy,
Mm-hmm.
right? As the game has evolved, as the criteria has evolved, as relationships with conferences and champions has evolved, there comes a time when like, we've thrown a lot of history and tradition out the window on the college football sides of things. And the independent competitor may be one of those things that just has to go. Because when I think about it, it's the same thing as like, say Jerry Jones all of a sudden decides they're going to opt out of their division in the NFL. They're just going to be independent. And if they get 8 and whatever record, if they win 8 games, they get to be in the playoffs
Hmm.
arbitrarily. Doesn't matter how their division does, doesn't matter how they compete against people in their own space. To me, you're trying to sort of jam multiple systems together, essentially where we stand right now. And you saw that come out the back end with a Notre Dame. You saw that come out the back end, admittedly, with Alabama being able to get destroyed by Georgia and not be punished for it, with Vanderbilt being a 10-2 SEC team and not getting in. I'm not even going to bring up Texas because we lost to Florida. So, like, it is what it is. Yeah, we beat 2 teams that are in the playoffs, lost to 2 teams in the playoffs, sure, but you're a 9-3 team. So, like, you've created a scenario now where multiple teams can sit on the outside looking in and say, well, I have a reason to be here, but we don't have any sort of, to your point, the criteria is multiple people that are involved in these schools sitting in a room and making decisions arbitrarily is really what it
Hmm.
comes down to. And so if you're going to have this much money tied up in something like this, you owe it to yourselves and you owe it to the teams that are competing to say, here are the parameters. Here's how we're going to do this. It's going to be a 16 team playoff. The 2 conference championship contenders are going to be in for all the Power Four. The top, you know, the G5 winners are going to be in, and then we're going to have an at-large, pool of the top ranked teams by the end of the year that go in as well. Whatever you want it to be, list out what that criteria is going to be, and then let everybody play by those rules. It's never going to be perfect because you're trying to jam, again, together multiple systems, multiple conferences to make this thing work. But you look at the professional leagues, which is what this is becoming now, especially from a money invested standpoint, and it's easy. You can be mad that your team didn't make it, but you can't be mad at how they didn't make it because you can see the numbers, you can see the tiebreakers, you can see the way this breaks down. And we're now realizing very openly why that exists and sort of why that system works in these spaces. And so, yeah, does it suck for Notre Dame? For sure. And do I have empathy for them in the sense of exactly to the point you made? ESPN, they bought the rights to this college football playoff announcement and these rankings and whatever else. It should be one thing at the end of the year. They should watch the
Yeah.
totality of these seasons and make decisions one time at the end of the year. And what they did was they told Notre Dame they were in all the way until it was time to pick your date for homecoming. And then all of
Hmm.
a sudden they flipped it out, knowing full well that the head-to-head was there, knowing full well that Notre Dame and Miami had played multiple teams together and that there was a difference. And all those metrics were there leading up to it. So I really do understand and empathize Notre Dame's strategic pettiness, I would say, in this space, because they were told one thing for multiple weeks, because ESPN wanted to have another show that had ratings, because they bought it the CFP rights for 400 billion whatever number it was, and
Yeah.
and now they want to get their money back on it. I get that, but what you're doing is you're creating a system that now is going to, I mean, maybe it was strategic in the sense of like, we're all talking about it now, right? I cannot get away from people's opinions on these things online at the moment. And it all stems from the ESPN college football playoff show. So maybe that is strategic in their sense as well. But yeah, I get it. Don't play the game. Don't give ESPN the extra revenue for Notre Dame to be on the program in whatever bowl they were going to be in. I understand those points. Where my frustration comes into play, and this is a lot of what I was sort of soapboxing to you before we decided to talk about this, was, man, I look at Notre Dame, I look at Kansas State, Iowa State, Baylor. I look at these schools, Rutgers. I look at these schools that are legitimately bowl eligible teams, right? Went into it, knew they had gotten a bowl. They're going to look at all of the seniors on their team, who 99% of which are not going to have an opportunity to play at the NFL, and basically say, screw you. We've now arbitrarily ended your season for you.
Yeah.
You might have had a chance to bring family over. You might have had a chance to put a bow tie on this career. You might have had a chance to mentally prepare for the fact that this phase of your life that has taken up so much of your life is going to end now. And you're going to do it in a big hurrah, whether it is the Reliant Quest Bowl or the college football playoff. This is your last opportunity to do that in this type of competitive fashion because of how football operates. And whether it was the organization, whether it was the coaching staff, whether it was a full team vote, and all of the freshmen and sophomores that have multiple years of eligibility left are voting sort of against the senior class. That doesn't sit well with me that those seasons are arbitrarily ended for those guys. And that wouldn't sit well with me no matter what the sport was. Because you and I played, and yeah, sure. Like I opted to stop playing after a couple of years, but I got to do it on my own terms. I got to get to the
Yeah.
end of that season and make that decision, and I knew that the end of my career was coming at the end of that year, and so I got to play that year out with reckless abandon, knowing that that was my opportunity and get good with that. Right? There wasn't a situation where, our team was on the verge of making the playoffs or just missed, and we were going to go to a different type of tournament. And all the freshmen just leaned up and said, I don't want to play anymore. And so it just was done. Right. I didn't have that moment. And so that's the part that I'm really struggling with on this whole piece. And I'm curious what your thoughts are from your point of view, from being a football player and kind of going through that process. Maybe it is a situation where like everyone's beat up at the end of the season and you just want to go home and you don't care. But I just struggle I can't imagine knowing that's my last year and other people outside of my control, even though I did what needed to be done to play that one more game, said, no, actually, we're not going to do that. You're just going to go home and give me back your jersey. I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
So as a Division III football player, we have had a college football championship for a very long time, and a playoff, I should say, for a very long time. We didn't have bowl games. They do now at the Division III level. We didn't have bowl games. We had being drawn into a bracket. So what I see now at the Division I level is everything that I went through as a Division III player.
Hmm.
And I always thought that it was the right way to go. Um, my freshman year, I will never forget, we were second in our conference. We lost one game that year to the champion, and we were given essentially there was a bowl game, but it was called the ECAC, and it was a you know consolation game for us is what we felt. We felt we were good enough to go into the playoffs, and we were given that bid, and our coach stood in front of us and said, "Who wants to play in this game, and who wants to wait and see if we made the playoff?" And as a team, we voted to not play in that game and to wait and see if we made the playoff. We inevitably did make the playoff. We lost that first game. And then the next year, we're an automatic bid. We're the top seed. We win our first game, lose our second one, but we also were able to make the decision for ourselves. And that is what, as you were talking, what made me think of that's what made me think of it, right? Is that situation was a situation I was certainly in, where we as a team decided we weren't going to play in a game. We ripped up the application and everything else that went with it, and we waited to see what was going to happen, and inevitably we made the playoff. But if we didn't, our season would have been over. We wouldn't have had any extra games. We wouldn't have had anything. But we made that decision together as a team. So I can I can sympathize and empathize with the team of like we want to go out and we feel we put in the time to go out and earn something bigger. So I can see, as I said, I can understand not wanting a consolation prize, to be completely honest. And that for me was big because when I was in college, it was a total team vote where not one of us was like, yeah, let's play in the ECAC. It was no, like we're gonna wait for the playoff. We drew into a very tough part of the bracket. We ended up, we lost to the same team my freshman and sophomore year in the playoffs, so just one game apart, as well as I think like three points each time. I think it was 3 points the first time,
Mm.
2 points the second time, and we were winning the second time. So like those things just stick with you, but yeah, I mean, we made that decision to not play and we made it together. The coach didn't make that decision. They asked us. So I can understand if the players made that decision. But as you
Mm.
said, there was, regardless whether it was emotional or strategic pettiness, there was still pettiness that was involved. And based on Notre Dame's athletic director being on camera as much as he has been in the last couple of days, I'm going to say that this decision didn't come from the people putting on the helmets. right? It came from the people that signed the checks and sit in the cushy offices. So that in and of itself for me is not right in that regard. Now, if the players did make that decision, great, right? That is, I feel like that is their right to do it. The other part that came to mind as you were talking when you talked about the revenue and the money factor of it is that a lot of people didn't realize that when you opt out of a bowl game, you get fined. And the first team, I think the first team to opt out was Iowa State, to be honest. I know I think I may have misspoke before and said it was Notre Dame, but I think, and maybe Iowa State was just the first team that I had seen that had opted out of a bowl game. But when I saw the headline for Iowa State opting out, it said that it was going to come with, maybe $50,000 in fines and had
500,000
it was a 500,000.
is half a mil. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I missed a zero on that. But in one of my group texts, a friend of mine was like, "Who gets that money?" So, he's a college coach, and he asked administration, and they were like, "The other school." So Iowa State now has to pay their whatever bowl opponent, whatever it would have been in whatever bowl game they were selected to play in, a fine of, I guess, $500,000, which is interesting to me. It's not something I ever knew about. I mean, I hope that's correct. So, this is secondhand that I'm getting this from, but apparently they have to now pay the other school that they would have played in this bowl game that fine. It doesn't go to the NCAA. It doesn't go to the TV revenue that ABC or ESPN is missing out on. It goes to the other school. What do you make of that? I mean, obviously, it's we didn't discuss that portion of it before we came on, but like, what do you make of a school getting fined and needing to pay their potential opponent for not showing up?
Yeah. I mean, first off, I wonder if it's like, I wonder what the policy is during the season. That obviously has way larger implications. And now I'm just thinking about it. I don't know anything to do with what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do kind of understand the standpoint of like, if they can't find anybody to replace that opponent in a bowl setting, like that's lost potential revenue for that school, right? That's not as much
Mhm.
notoriety. That's not a nationally televised game. You're taking away a lot of what that other school has an opportunity to do and what they earned to do based on their record. And so I appreciate that if you're going to do the fine, I think, barring the bowl getting canceled, if the bowl gets canceled, I wouldn't be surprised if there was more people coming with their Oliver Twist bowl and going, "Hey, where's my money? Because
Yeah.
we paid for this sponsorship, we paid for this whatever." And maybe that's between the TV rights holder and the bowl administrator and whoever. I'm sure there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen in that whole scenario. But if you're the one that looks at another opponent and says, "Look, we have a game signed up, but I'm not going to do it," I kind of enjoy that the fine goes to that school like that. I mean, you're eliminating that school's opportunity for a more competitive game, for more notoriety, for more everything. Because whoever they're going to find to replace that team is just statistically by nature not as strong of a team, not as strong of a program, and probably isn't going to draw the same attention as that original matchup would have done. So I kind of dig it. In all honesty, I think there should be a some sort of consequence for just looking at you know, looking at this thing that you've sort of opted in to do and go, I don't actually want to do that.
Yeah. I will do I have done some real time fact checking as we're talking about this. And it looks like most of it goes to the conference. So maybe not the school that they were going to play, but it goes to their own conference because of it says the Big 12's reasoning is the conference must honor contracts with its affiliated bowl games. So skipping creates a breach of obligation. So the institutional fine. So
Hmm.
each school was fined 500,000, labeled as an institutional fine rather than a payment to a specific bowl game. So it does go to the conference that they play in, and I'm sure that there's something that these other schools are compensated with. So the fine doesn't go from,
So Iowa
Iowa
State's
State.
playing the Big 12 $500,000 because they didn't
Yes,
do their part of the deal, basically.
exactly.
Okay.
So it's a breach of contract is essentially what this is. So real time fact checking, like I said, I'd gotten it secondhand of like, who does this money go to? Um, and but there's precedent behind all of these things, and the fine goes to the conference. I don't know if the conference will then pay the school that is losing out on some of this revenue as well, but the check gets written to whichever conference they are a part of. So some real-time fact checking. I know that people may see this and be like, well, what the hell, you guys are wrong. So never feel bad about being wrong about something, or speaking on something and not having the correct thing, if as long as you do correct yourself.
We were only wrong for a few minutes.
For a few minutes, for just a little bit. So real-time fact checking, it does go to the conference, not the school that they were going to play. However, I wouldn't be against it going to the school that they were going to play,
I was
right?
about to say, my
I wouldn't
amended
be against
statement is
that.
I've changed my mind. I want it to go to the school they're playing. That's
Yeah.
my new proposal. Is I think that's you should have to shame pay whoever you refuse to compete against in a bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think, is that if you opt out of a bowl game, somebody else should be compensated. Because let's face it, the Big 12 conference doesn't need to be compensated for that. The conferences don't need to be compensated for that. They're the ones doing all the
Yeah.
deals and all these other things. Like the schools, if anything, need to be compensated for these things. So
Yeah.
even though I have fact checked myself in real time, I do believe that it should be the first way, and that the school that you were supposed to play in the bowl game should get the bowl money that they would normally get to play in that bowl.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that would, I don't know, feels like a good motivator for a lot of different schools in that situation, which actually I think segues pretty well to what I believe is probably our ultimate or final kind of question of the day, and I'll pose it to you first, which is like there's been all, we've seen full teams opt out now. There's all of this stuff going on around sort of bowl season and playoffs and what's the point and da 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 da. So then, of course, the next kind of natural line of thinking for everybody is, well, bowl games are just going to go by way of the dinosaur now. They're going to disappear entirely. No one's going to play in them. They're useless. No one, whatever. What is your opinion on? Because I've pontificated on this enough now that I feel like I do have an opinion on this. But what is your
Yeah.
feeling on this sort of like broad-based assumption that like, well, Notre Dame isn't going, and these four other schools said no, therefore bowl season is dead as we know, is dead as we know it.
I don't think that it is, mostly because the bowl games are still wrapped into the college football playoff, right? So if you're lucky enough, the Tostito, it's not Tostitos Fiesta Bowl anymore, but the Fiesta Bowl is now wrapped into the college football playoff, where this team is playing in the Fiesta Bowl. The winner of the Fiesta Bowl plays the winner of the whatever.com bowl, like all these different things, right? But the outside bowl game, outside the college football playoff bowl season, I think could be in some trouble. And maybe this is a one-off thing, but I think Notre Dame is kind of setting a precedent, and I believe that Florida State honestly would have set a precedent had they decided to opt out of their bowl game against Georgia last year,
Mm.
but they decided to play, right? And they play in what is essentially a meaningless bowl game, and you kind of go from that. But I do think that a precedent has been set of, we didn't make the playoff, we're gonna head home. But like the changes that are being made to criteria within these bowl games, because you had a 5-loss Duke that won the ACC conference and is saying ACC champion, we should be in, automatic bid, this, that, whatever. But there was just so many other things that were going into it. So now they're going to look at their criteria. The Notre Dame AD is saying if we're ranked in the top 12, we're guaranteed a spot. Just all these clauses that they have now part of their deal, which is insane. But then it's the group of 5 teams. It's the JMU and Tulane that are in there, where it's a as Greg Sankey said last year, and he kind of backtracked on this statement this year. But one of these things is not like the other. And yes, JMU and Tulane certainly not like the other. But when he was speaking about it, he was speaking about the ACC. He was speaking about another Power Five, Power Four conference when he said that 2 years ago on what was it, College Game Day. So this year he kind of backtracks and everything else, but I think that in the long run, I think bowl games will be okay. I feel like they will expand to 16 teams, and the Rose Bowl will still be the semifinal to get into the college football national championship. You'll have something else on the opposite side of the bracket, but each one of these teams, it'll be this team is playing in the Fiesta Bowl. This team is playing in this bowl. This team has this bowl game, and it'll be nothing but bowl games up and down the bracket. And you win this bowl game, you get this Pop Tart Bowl trophy, and you head off to, like I said, the Fiesta Bowl. You win the Fiesta Bowl, you're headed off to the Rose Bowl, and then the Rose Bowl leads you into the national championship. So I feel like that is the path that they're on. And from that standpoint, I think bowl games will be okay, but it's the meaningless ones, the ones that people aren't really that interested in. The ones that you see Notre Dame and Kansas State and Iowa State opting out of because they're not part of the big dance. So the money of it all is what's going to change things because the as I've named a number of times, these bowl games are sponsored by whoever. So you're going to see potentially less sponsorship numbers because if I'm, sponsoring the Ryan Holmes Bowl and I think that I'm going to get a Notre Dame Iowa State game in the Ryan Holmes Bowl and then Notre Dame opts out and all the money that I spent to get my name and my business or whatever it is on this bowl game, I'm now out that money. There's got to be the contracts for these sponsorships are going to be written very differently now. That if I'm not a college football playoff bowl and I'm an outlier bowl, let's call it, and I'm not part of that big dance bracket and things are changing, those conference or at least those bowl game deals for sponsorship are going to be, if this game isn't played, I want all my money back. And who's to say that's not already happening? I don't know. It's not already happening because we've never actually really seen this many teams opt out of bowl games. So I'm not sure if that actually happened or whatever else, but I feel like that clause will certainly be in there because you're paying for that amount of visibility on TV and you have already forked up how many millions of dollars to have your company name on this bowl game. So I think it's a double-edged sword. The college football playoff bowl games will be just fine because they will have the cachet to be a part of the bracket, just like the teams that have the cachet to be part of the bracket. And just like the teams that don't have the cachet to be part of the bracket and the bowl games that don't have the cachet to be part of the bracket, it's going to be just another outlier. So I'm hopeful that you do see teams continue to play in bowl games, but with this precedent being set, if it's a team that is left out in the cold instead of making that top 16, and I mean this year top 12, I can definitely see a lot more teams just saying, okay, well then our season's over. That's just how it's going to go. But no, I think I think the bowl season is safe for now, at least until, and at least because the college football playoff is expanding. So more of them will be included in the bracket. But those outliers, it's going to be real tough to have, the Outback Bowl or whatever else. It's going to be very tough to have those types of bowl games because the revenue isn't going to be coming in for one of these companies with a couple mil to put their name on it.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously agree with you on the college football playoff side. Those are going to be they've got enough swagger to them, and those companies will never give up, that because it is it's night and day comparison as far as your ROI. I'm sure the money you have to pay too, but the
Mm-hmm.
exposure that you have at the the VRBO Fiesta Bowl, I believe is what it is now, if when
Yeah.
Tostitos gave it up. But the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, that kind of stuff, right? I mean, those are always going to be what they are. I am cautiously optimistic that the remainder bowls are going to stay where they are, and I say that completely biased. Fallout.
You froze.
Yeah, I did my you froze too, and I was like, shit, we can obviously edit all that out.
I can edit that out.
When did you stop hearing me?
When you said completely biased, that's the last
Oh,
word I heard.
cool. Okay, I can go from there.
Yep.
Uh, yeah. So this is all coming from a completely biased standpoint as somebody who grew up on a, 45 choice bowl pool that you fill out every year and you push
Mm-hmm.
$10 in and it gives you something to watch over the holidays with family. So for me, there's definitely a nostalgic aspect to it, and that's why I like them as much as I do. Um, but in my opinion, I mean, I think the Bulls are going to have to reinvent themselves if they stick around. But I do think there's a place for them in college football, and I think there's a relevant place for them in college football. I think there's sort of two lanes that you could explore when it comes to these bowls, right? Or three. I mean, the traditional one we still have, which is, man, for the love of the game, we're going to go compete against a random team. We're going to put up, Big Ten versus SEC and these different matchups and just see what happens, right? That's going to draw eyes. It's going to be a fun experience for the players. It's something unique. It's teams you'd never see play against each other. Let's go see what happens, right? I think that element of it, there's always an argument for that element of it. I think
Mm-hmm.
if we talk about sort of how football is developing, I think if you set expectations for the bowl games, it could be one of two things. It could be one, an opportunity for guys that are looking for transfer portal opportunities now that timeline has moved back, at least for the games that are before that January window. you know, this is the chance for you to show up and show out, right? Kind of your last hurrah, show everybody what you can do. Let's do trick plays. Let's do flashier plays. Let's bomb the ball down. Let's see what guys are doing. Now, coaches obviously may not be motivated to do that, but players may want to compete and play because it's an opportunity for them to show what they have, and then we'll see what happens when the transfer portal rolls around. What I would almost rather it do, and again, it's coming. There's no data to back this up. It's just what I wish would happen because I think it would be interesting is if you do have this big transfer portal movement and you have these guys that are opting out because they want to go to a different school or they're dealing with money or whatever, shoot, man, do this and almost treat it like a prospect game. Like see what freshmen and sophomores are kicking around at Florida State and let's see what they can do, man. Throw out all those guys. So instead of having Florida State's backups and Georgia's full fledged, like throw both the backups out there and
Yeah.
let's see what goes on, right? Put in that red shirt freshman or that true freshman that we want to see what he's all about. We've heard about him, he signed, whatever else, and let the coaches see what that looks like in a game setting. Put it up against somebody else's team. Now, are you going to run into the same, well, they could go out and show up and go on the transfer portal issues? Yeah. So I think a lot of this couldn't happen until we clean up some of the guardrails and some of the edges around the Wild West that is, you know, just buying kids off and transferring all that kind of stuff.
And fix
That's
the
all got
calendar for that matter.
exactly. Yeah, that all unfortunately for my thing to work, that has to get reformed and I've got no confidence that's going to get done.
No.
But if it does, I think having those games set up is like, yeah, absolutely I would sit down and watch Texas or Texas Tech's freshman and sophomore go face up against somebody else's freshman and sophomore and just see what we got coming down the line. Who do we recruit? What's going on? How do they play? Like I think there's still a space for all of those things to be there. And I'll continue to put my $10 in and watch those games and see what the hell happens at the end of the day. So it's mine stems from more from nostalgia. It stems more from just a general love of those games as a whole. But I do think inevitably because of the way that college football is growing, you're going to have to iterate those. You're going to have to innovate those for them to, for your point, for Bad Boys Mowers to pay for the Gasparilla Bowl, for Kinder to pay
Yeah.
for the Texas Bowl, for the for these random, for Snoop Dogg to keep paying the Arizona Bowl. Like there's going to have to be something there for them to want to continue to do it. So I don't know. To your point, it remains to be seen. I don't think it's going to be something that happens in the next 2 years, but let's talk about this in 5 to 7 years and kind of see what happens when we've got a full cycle of this stuff that's gone through and we've all decided how much we care about this.
Yeah, overall, there just needs to be reform all around. The calendar needs to be reformed. They're definitely going to. There's already. I mean, we haven't even seen one game from the college football playoff, and they're already talking about how they're going to make changes next year and how they're going to essentially take it out of the committee's hands, which, in essence, you started it, for lack of a better term. You put it
Yeah,
into
I'm not
the
against
committee's
it.
hands. So, and not for nothing, there was always a BCS committee, but they had more of this team should move here, this team should move here when the computer spit out the rankings. It wasn't very arbitrary. It wasn't a subjective kind of, I think this team is better than this team. We're not going to penalize Bama because you're injecting the politics of all of it. But
Yeah.
no matter what happens, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to watch some football. I'm going to enjoy whatever it is, whoever is playing on television, because I love the game. And we'll get back to what happens in the dark rooms of the college football playoff committee and how they make their decisions another time, because there's football to watch. And that's what I'm going to watch. And I can't wait to see who wins this year's national championship. I honestly can't believe that we're already there and that we're already watching the college football playoff. So no matter what, there are changes that need to be made. There's reforms that need to be made, whether you're selecting a team or excuse me, selecting a team to head off to the next stage of the college football playoff, or you're pushing a team into such and such bowl game. So it remains to be seen. We will certainly sit back and watch in amazement or entertainment or in complete cringe with whatever happens. But that is our takes on these opt-outs, how the money is going to change things, whether it's petty on one end or petty on another with emotion or strategic pettiness. You be the judge of that. I'm somewhere in the middle of, there was probably a little bit of both, and I'm happy with all of it. But we appreciate you listening and watching the Athletes to Athletes podcast. I'm Ryan Holmes for Reed Meyer. We'll see you guys next time.